Texas officials blast National Weather Service for faulty forecast and deadly flood disaster. Ryan Grimm says, I could not possibly be filled with more rage after seeing Texas Republicans blame the National Weather Service forecast for the unspeakable tragedy that hit the girls' camp. You were warned this would happen if you fired everyone. You actively chose to fire as many scientists working on the federal government as possible and have even taken weather balloons out of the sky. These were people who dedicated their lives to this stuff, and you fired them so you could do tax cuts. You do not now get to complain that weather forecasts are off. Please go find these girls and rehire these scientists. It can't be known at this time what the specific effect of the cuts was. What can be known is nobody who supported all the firings gets to complain about the performance of an agency they torched. And stop letting people build in known danger zones. Do you think the warning coordination meteorologist position at the Austin San Antonio office was important? He left in April as a part of the Doge cuts, which offered early retirement to reduce the workforce. It's now vacant, part of the strategy of reducing staff through attrition.
That we received on Wednesday from the National Weather Service predicted 3 to 6 inches of rain.
This is the same as like air traffic control, reducing the numbers of air traffic control for decades and decades and decades, and then complaining that planes are either not on time or falling out of the sky. It's just like they did this, they made this problem, and then they get to complain, I guess.
In the Concho Valley and 4 to 8 inches of rain in the Hill Country. We worked with our own meteorologists to fine-tune that weather statement, and as many of you know, and many of you in broadcast journalism and meteorology, you can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts.
This rain event sat on top of that and dumped more rain than what was forecasted on both of those forks. When we got the report, it was about 7 feet or so on the South Fork, and within a matter of minutes it was up to 29 feet, and all of that converged at the Guadalupe, and that's where we saw those very quick rise in flood.
But listen, everybody got the forecast from the National Weather Service, right? You all got it. You're all in media. You got that forecast. It did not predict the amount of rain that we saw. The original forecast that we received on Wednesday.
Texas is blaming the National Weather Service for the weather changing from the original forecast. The 3 satellites that the Department of Defense stopped allowing NOAA access data from June onward from June 30th were specifically designed to monitor rapid intensification like what occurred. If you want to point fingers, start there. We have warned about the National Weather Service and NOAA and their regular business being disrupted, not only underfunded, but like deliberately left in a state of disrepair for months at this point. And now that the chickens are coming home to roost, the fact that the very people who like played a key role in this, the party administration, the apparatus that played a role in this, the ideology that played a role in this, the ideology that also is playing a formative role in defunding FEMA as well for disaster on the disaster relief side. Make no mistake, like we're burning the candle from both ends here. Okay, we are disrupting the ways in which. Like, we're not doing anything about climate change, okay? That's a given, right? That's not happening. But the fact that we are also simultaneously making it harder to predict, to take the additional steps necessary for at least, like, saving more lives, and then simultaneously defunding the aspects that are perhaps most necessary in the upcoming years, like FEMA, to engage in the recovery and rebuilding efforts, is insane. This is not negligence. This is deliberate. I don't know how else to read this other than like they just want people to be victim to natural disasters that are going to keep increasing in size, magnitude, frequency as a direct consequence of anthropogenic climate change. And because these sorts of any sort of real measure, any sort of real systemic solution to anthropogenic climate change is seen as like anti-capitalist and woke and communist and leftist, but because it's like harmful to the bottom line of the oil and gas giants, the fossil fuel industry, which we are firmly committed to, we are not only not doing anything about climate change, but we're also taking this additional step to reduce any sort of warning system that we had, like significantly cut back on the warning systems that we have and cut back on the recovery and relief systems that we have as well. It makes no sense. There have been claims about NOAA and NWS did not foresee catastrophic Texas floods, but that's simply not true. This was undoubtedly an extreme event, but messaging rapidly escalated beginning 12 hours prior. Flood watch mid PM, heads up, outlook late PM, flash flood warnings 1 a.m. WPC issued as many 6 MPDs for the deadly flash flooding in the Texas Hill country, starting yesterday evening and lasting through much of today. The first MPD generally set the stage for what was to come, while the next 3 shown were as the event unfolded. As always, it's not to blame the victims. Quite the opposite. This truly was a sudden and massive event and occurred at the worst possible time, middle of the night. But problem, once again, was not a bad weather prediction. It was one of the last mile forecast / warning dissemination. I am not aware of the details surrounding staffing levels at the local National Weather Service offices involved, nor how that might have played into the timing and sequence of warnings involved. But I do know that locations that flooded catastrophically had at least 1 to 2 plus hours of direct warning from NWS. A big part of the problem, I think, is also, this is not victim blaming at all, but from all the Texas chatters that were in here yesterday, from what I understand, and I kind of get it from LA as well, because like we rarely have flash flood warnings, but it does happen every now and then. But oftentimes when a flash flood warning comes in, it's not as severe, right? So I think it's one of those things where people see that, especially at night, they didn't even see it most likely. But when they see it, they just ignore it because they just don't think that it's like super deadly. No one takes flash flood warnings seriously. I have received flash flood warnings in the past in Los Angeles and just went, oh well. And I guess like, especially with the frequency of flash flood warnings in a place like Texas, people most likely assumed it was just like a little thing and not as severe, not as significant. It's like, it's the worst of all events coming together. Holiday weekend, happens at night, rapid escalation going from the 6 foot to what, like 20 plus feet out of nowhere. Like it was just it was a horrifying situation, especially when you consider that most of Texas is built on floodplains. So with no real way to have the water move through the land or have the land suck up the water. So there's also that. I don't know Texas state specifically, but usually there's also like a levee system that they have in a lot of these states that are susceptible to extreme flooding that ends up destroying some of the lower income neighborhoods in an effort to save the higher income neighborhoods. That is a real levee structure that they have in places like Louisiana, for example, where they will quite literally build levees that end up dumping more water than normal into lower income neighborhoods in an effort to save higher income neighborhoods. So there is that aspect of capitalism as well. No, I don't think the levee system happened here. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that is like, I'm making a broader point about how the way we design society ends up harming poor people more in events like this. I'm not saying that this is what happened in Texas. So it's basically the powder keg situation. One thing I do know is that this part of Texas Hill County is infamous for sudden and violent flood risk. That is an intrinsic product of being a hilly region with flashy watersheds subject to occasional but very extreme precipitation events arising from the bathtub warm Gulf. I'm not really clear on why a region so well known for its severe flood susceptibility apparently did not have a better warning system in place. That's something I'm sure the others with better local knowledge can dissect in greater details. But this does illustrate a few tragic and uncomfortable truths. The first is that even quite good weather forecasts do not automatically translate into life-saving predictions. There's a lot of other work that has to take place to contextualize the forecast and ensure it gets to the right people. The second is that the NWS historically has done a very good job at that forecast contextualization, outreach to the local governments, emergency managers, outdoor recreation facilities, etc. But that's one of the first things to go away when offices are critically understaffed. Exactly. Like, this is a suspicion, right? Because at this point, we haven't done an autopsy yet. There is no like full-blown autopsy yet as to how we got to this point, right? But the initial suspicion is that given the budget cuts and the understaffing that already exists in a lot of these agencies, it probably limits the amount of outreach they can do in a critical moment, which is precisely the reason why these agencies should not be understaffed ever at any given point, because this is a life-saving measure. It is crazy. It is crazy that this is like even a point of contention.